If you own a watch brand or you're starting a watch brand, do not skip this video. I'm genuinely serious. Today we're going to discuss the Dial Quadrant. Now, so many people have asked me in Zoom calls, on Instagram, what is that photo behind your desk on the wall? This is the Dial Quadrant. It is a system that I created in 2022 to grow any watch brand, to give them marketing angles, a marketing strategy and a marketing methodology. And you can apply this. You can apply everything on this poster and build out an entirely successful marketing strategy for your watch brand to grow over the next couple of months. And today I'm giving you access in this video to a training video that I made for clients of ours, for watch brands that we work with, explaining how the Dial Quadrant works. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. And if you enjoy this video, if you own a watch brand, you're about to start a watch brand, or you are interested in marketing watches and the marketing of watch brands and learning a little bit more, then please consider hitting like and subscribe. Let's go ahead and get started. I created the Dial Quadrant in 2022 as a visual model for defining your watch brand's strategic position. Now, let me tell you why this came about. We had a lot of clients that we would start working with who we would manage marketing for, and then I'd receive an email campaign from them because we subscribe to all of our clients' obviously mailing lists so we can see what's going out. And from a few clients, I would receive emails and I'd be like, that's a bit strange. We've not got an email going out today. And I'd open it and I'd see a drag and drop email with the worst ChatGPT sort of bad copywriting you've ever seen. And it would say, new release coming soon, whatever it may be. And I would ask the brand owner, why have you sent this email? Their sort of excuse or reason would be, oh, I just wanted to get something out. And it would be confusing because we would literally have a plan with them that they approved for the emails, for the whole launch planned out. And one night, I don't know why, they would just send an email by themselves randomly. And those emails were never on brand. They were never in line with what we had planned, with all the work we were doing. And it was super, super strange. It destroys their brand when they do this sort of knee-jerk marketing. And so many brand owners are actually guilty of this. Now, this resulted in marketing being mixed, messy. Even things like social media, their Instagram feeds just looked messy. And I created this. Now, before I show you it, I want to explain that when I first created this, it was pretty much a document, like a physical document that I drew out. And I then decided, I would say in 2024, 2 years later, to actually make it something marketable. And I have never, ever shared it. We use it internally for all of our team, and we talk our brand owners through it that are with our done for you services. But I've never, ever shared it publicly. It's never, at the date of recording at least, never been on Instagram. It's never been in any ads we run. It's never been on YouTube. It's never been anywhere. So as of me recording this right now at least, this is the first time I will publicly share, or well, publicly, to anyone in the program at least, the Dial Quadrant. And the brands that we work with have found it really, really useful for planning their marketing and ensuring that everything stays streamlined, because it's not just a diagram, it is a way of thinking, and we're going to go fully into that in this lesson, okay? So let's review the quadrant, and please take note of this. We will be referring back to it. Now, I have this on the last slide of today's lesson as well, but I will say now, we're going to go into the quadrant in the next slide. However, I have a printable poster below this lesson that you can print out. I was considering printing some and selling them, but to be honest, for the price I'd sell them for, the shipping, all that stuff is not worth it. So instead, we've just created a printable digital version that you can print out. You can use the screensaver, you can resize, whatever you'd like to do. Okay. So this is the quadrant. Now, your positioning will define how your brand scales, because as I've said in the branding lesson, if you bring out a dress watch and then a diver and then a field watch, nothing really makes sense. especially if they all look different. It doesn't follow a brand pattern. So we want to try and help you show how you're perceived and ensure that all of your marketing fits into that. And the Dial Quadrant helps you clarify who you are, what type of customer you serve, and how you communicate to said customer, okay? And this is a thought process that starts before you design an ad, before you write a web page, before you write a press release, or even before you design your next timepiece, okay? Now, you can see here, I hope you can see my cursor. This is the Dial Quadrant. Now, essentially a circular, a bit like a watch dial, a circular diagram with 4 quadrants. We have utility, we have prestige, we have lifestyle, and we have technical. Now, it is my belief that every single watch brand on the planet fits in the Dial Quadrant. I've yet to find one that doesn't. If you find one, please let me know and we can change the quadrant. But we probably won't, because they all fit inside this quadrant. And I will show you in the next couple of slides exactly how. Now, you're probably looking at this and already thinking which area your brand fits in. And we're going to dive into that so that you have a better understanding of each section of the quadrant as well. So, once again, you are on the quadrant. I have tried to get some examples that I can think of, at least in my opinion, that fit in each area. So we have Patek, we have Swatch, we have Patek for prestige, we have Swatch for lifestyle. I think they are heavily in the lifestyle quadrant, to be honest. We have Grand Seiko for technical. There's a lot of watches that Grand Seiko produce, but I do think a lot of their watches have really technically advanced developments in them, if that makes sense. That's why I've put them in technical for this example, at least. And then we have Sin in utility. Okay? Now, once again, you're probably already thinking where you fit in the quadrant, but this also applies to your marketing. So let's go through each quadrant and talk about what each actually is so that you have a full, clear understanding. So utility. If you are in the utility quadrant, top left quadrant there, you serve a purpose. Your watches serve a purpose. So every material, every size, like the proportion of the dial, the hands, the case hardening, it's designed to perform inside the environment that you've designed the timepiece for, okay? So they are instruments or tools or computers first and watches second, if that makes sense. So, for example, there are dive watches, okay? With the bezel on a dive watch, it has a utility. It would be a utility watch, okay? Now, that doesn't make you a utility brand, but if the watch is designed for deep sea diving and it has a bezel that's functioning, then it's a utility. A GMT could be a utility watch as well, because it has a GMT hand, which gives it a purpose, gives it a tool first and foremost, okay? Now, utility, in my opinion, sits at the very baseline of horology in general. So the original purpose of a watch was not as a status symbol or a decoration, okay? It was to allow people to tell the time accurately, okay? If you think back to field watches, etc., the Dirty Dozen and so on, watches were given to soldiers so that they could tell the time in battle and so on. That is the purpose of utility. It's a tool first and a watch second, okay? Now, utility brands do not typically chase trends or the prestige status, the prestige quadrant, okay? Which is just across from utility. They are built for reliability, endurance, and truth in specification. Now, when I say truth in specification, I just want to explain that a little bit more. There are some brands, especially prestige brands, startup prestige brands that I can think of that I've seen that are very wishy-washy about their specifications, but they also claim that the watch is kind of utility, it's a diver, it's a tool, but they never talk about it. So there's a bit of a grey area there. So truth and specification to me is that you're marketing the utility of the watch and you're honest about it, about what it can achieve, what it can do, and how long it's going to serve you as a tool, okay? Now, there's one caveat. A utility brand or timepiece can, however, gain prestige or heritage through time and outputting consistently impressive products. Think back to the early days or the amazing marketing stories brands like Rolex tell with their divers, with all the expeditions they've been on, with all their old adverts, you know, if you were climbing the Matterhorn, you'd wear a Rolex and so on, right? That is when a utility brand can go into prestige, can move, okay? And we'll get into that more, but brands can move within the Dial Quadrant. So once again, just to recap, the hallmarks of utility. Purpose-built, there's no excess, there's no fluff. Marketing's rooted in the tested certification and performance of the piece, of the tool. Materials are chosen for strength, not looks, not shine. Now, I understand every watch must actually look nice to the consumer you're aiming for, but obviously utility marketing is product first, it's utility first, it's tool first, okay? Function is the leading aesthetic. We're not talking about the gold bezel. We're not talking about how great the polishing on the bracelet is. Because whilst I'm sure you'd like to create a great field watch with an amazing bracelet with great polishing on it, as some brands have done, and I own a few micros that have done that, it is not the purpose. It's a utility watch, okay? It's important to remember. Prestige. So, I think you know already, you can think of some prestige brands, but they are the upper echelon. It's tradition, it's refinement, it's lineage, it's the foundation of identity. People wear these watches to be part of something, to form an identity. People see you wearing a really nice Rolex, okay, or a Patek, and you assume that they're going to make a certain assumption on you based on what watch you're wearing. That's the kind of buyer that buys prestige, okay? Typically in prestige brands, what we see is design evolves really, really slowly, if at all. There's so many watch brands. If you look, for example, micro brands, utility brands, smaller brands are always trying to strive forward, create something new, improve the depth rating, improve, you know, the finishing, whatever it might be. Prestige brands, they're often slower. They usually only have like one new flagship watch that they'll use for marketing, one new development. They're not constantly trying to iterate and improve, okay? And the reason behind that, if you ask their marketing director, is probably because we already achieved it 20 years ago. We don't need to improve anymore. Just buy our watch. But they typically do not evolve as fast as some other brands. And that doesn't matter if you're selling a watch for $12,000 plus, right? You really don't need to worry about improving your design if the demand is there. So prestige isn't about excess, it's about restraint. The goal is permanence, not attention, okay? Now, a lot of people get this confused. They think that they need everyone to be wearing their watch that's prestige, right? If they're starting a prestige brand or they own a prestige brand, they want everyone to be seen with their watch. They want everyone to have one. And the minute the brand launches, they think, great, we're going to sell 1,000 at whatever price. That's not how you build brand. As a prestige brand, you need to throttle output. Everything really needs to be limited or hard to attain. Think about Rolex, think about the waiting lists, think about everyone that posts about that, all the news articles about Rolex, okay? That's prestige. Now, I am a great believer that most of it is entirely manufactured. They 100% throttle supply on purpose. Is it doing harm to Rolex? That's something we can debate. I think it might be, but I'm still a fan of the brand nonetheless. So, hallmarks. Rooted in family heritage or historic maison culture. Now, maison culture is something I'm kind of obsessed with, I can't lie. Brands like Cartier and so on really, really interest me, so I thought I'd add that in there. Timeless proportions, classical design codes, communication grounded in legacy and emotion. Now, if you think about the marketing or you study the marketing of each sort of a brand on each section of the Dial Quadrant here, you will see legacy and emotions being the two leading marketing angles that most of these prestige brands will go for. It will always be about their history. It will be about the royal family that they've made watches for 3,000 years ago, right? It will be about that. All their advertising will be aspirational. Not an heirloom, not a purchase. And this reminds me actually of, I'm obviously a big fan of copywriting, vintage advertising and copywriting from, you know, even the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s. And it reminds me of that Patek Philippe, all those Patek Philippe ads with the father and the son saying that you never own a Patek Philippe, you merely take care of it for the next generation, which is, I mean, perfect. So there you go. That's prestige. That is how the brand is built in prestige. Next is lifestyle. I just noticed, by the way, I've just seen that. I didn't change this to say prestige. I'm so sorry. But that's meant to be prestige, of course. That's totally my bad. Here it is here. Okay, lifestyle. Now, I think we can all think of some lifestyle brands, but lifestyle brands essentially represent the modern face of horology, as I like to say. Design, culture, personality take precedence over technical abilities of a watch, technical developments, maybe even movement, or anything like lineage, as we just spoke about in prestige. Okay, these brands are built on emotion primarily rather than specification, and they speak to taste and the sort of statement a watch makes about the person wearing it. Lifestyle is where horology meets art direction, and there's so many brands I can think of that are fantastic examples of this. Every color, every texture and story is designed to resonate with a distinct audience. Not everyone, but someone. Now, a lot of people, when they think of lifestyle, will think of all these throwaway brands like movement watches, for example. And for some reason, most brand owners are kind of scared of that. And I don't really understand why, because there is other brands that I think fit into lifestyle that are phenomenal. I would say Studio Underdog is actually a great example of a lifestyle brand because they aren't stuck up like Prestige. They aren't focused on utility specifically. It's not a tool first, at least at this moment in time. You know, we never know what direction a brand might go in. But I would say they're definitely lifestyle. They have bold colours, interesting colours. The watermelon watch, which obviously I think is what took them viral back in, I think, was it 2021 or 2020? They had the Kickstarter. They're a lifestyle brand because they have a bit of hype around them. They've got customer interest from not just watch enthusiasts, but there's people, well-known YouTubers I've seen that wear Studio Underdog. There's people that I know that are nothing to do with the watch industry that have seen the watch and known what it is, known what the brand is, which in my opinion, when a non-watch person can understand, resonate, and actually want one of the pieces from a brand, I think it moves them into lifestyle, in my opinion. And you're probably thinking there's some watches or brands like Rolex that could be lifestyle, but we are going to get into that in later slides. So don't worry, I have covered that as well. I've been using the quadrant for long enough. So here we go. Here's some examples here, actually, I think are fantastic. The Studio Underdog watch that I just mentioned specifically. So once again, hallmarks: storytelling, driven communication and visual identity, design experimentation, playful color palettes, focused on community, creativity, and accessible exclusivity. So they might limit your throttle units, but everyone has a chance to get one. You're not going to go to a shop and be told you're not allowed in, for example. Expressive rather than functional, cultural rather than technical. Think about lifestyle. They're for people that would like a watch, people that like watches, not necessarily watch people, but watch people, a bit like Studio Underdog have done, can still want one of these watches from a lifestyle brand. Okay. Next, and finally, we have technical. So technical brands sit between, in my opinion, engineering and artistry, because they're not all about heritage and they're not all about design expression, but in performance. So accuracy, science, and to be honest, horological innovation, right? So every advancement from the architecture of the movement to case construction serves precision timekeeping. That's the point. Or it's to show off. It's a bit like when Audi, for example, bring out a new example car, specification car, right? It's not something they're necessarily going to produce, but it's to show off their prowess. I think that the technical brands, and I think I wrote it here, I did, it's a discipline, right? So it's to honor watchmaking and watchmaking ability and skill. It's to show how experienced their artisans are, if that makes sense, okay? They are typically purchased by those who appreciate timekeeping, okay? They appreciate the actual science more so than they might appreciate the emotion, okay? And we see all brands and sectors of the quadrant release a technical piece to show their prowess. And there is, as I've said, more to come on quadrant crossbreeding, because we do see so many watch brands bring out a watch that could be seen as technical, and you think, hold on a minute, they make affordable, fun watches for everyone, but they've just done this. That's impressive and shocking. I didn't expect that, right? So things can be changed here. We're going to talk about that very, very shortly. So hallmarks of technical: innovation as the brand's primary narrative, obsession with accuracy, finishing, movement, design, frequent breakthroughs in materials or manufacturing, communication led by data, certification, engineering authority, and, in my opinion, the least solely occupied quadrant, with more crossing or crossbreeding from time to time here. And we'll explain exactly what that means. Now, that's what the quadrant means. Here are the rules. Every watch brand, as a brand, overarching, exists or should exist within the Dial Quadrant. But clarity comes from direct focus on which quadrant you occupy, okay? The successful watch brands that we see scale with advertising and email marketing do not try and appease every quadrant overall. They build their identity through concentrating on one quadrant, okay? So a brand, in our opinion, should primarily operate within one or two quadrants or sectors of the Dial Quadrant. Does that make sense? One or two sections or sectors of the whole Dial Quadrant. So your core identity, your core marketing, your website design, and so on is formed by your dominant quadrant, whilst a secondary quadrant allows for growth and flexibility. Okay, so you can tune and chop and change your marketing based on your two quadrants. All right. So, for example, a technical utility brand can blend engineering with durability. An example of this, Omega's professional line, of course. Or a lifestyle prestige brand merges modern design with heritage culture and design cues like Cartier. Okay. There is many other examples of brands doing this. For example, and this will cause debate amongst you, I'm sure, brands like Christopher Ward, I see them as mainly lifestyle now. And I know that's wrong. They started as a micro brand. But I see them honestly as lifestyle because they're expanding so vastly. I see them as a brand that anyone can be interested in and purchase from, which in my opinion makes them directly lifestyle. However, I think they're also technical because they've released, the Belcanto, think about that. That was, I still desperately would like a Belcanto. It's the chiming watch that they made if you haven't seen it. It's priced at, I think, around, from memory, I think it's £3,000 to £4,000 sterling. It is awesome. Like my dream, I honestly wish I could own one day. Unfortunately, to this date, haven't worked with Christopher Ward, so I've not managed to steal one. But they, for example, I think they're lifestyle. I think they bring in average consumers, average Joes, as we like to call them, into watches and give them a fantastic quality watch for the price. Okay. I think they then recently, or as of, was it last spring, 2024, they brought out the Belcanto. I could be wrong. But I believe that is when they started moving to show their technical prowess, to show we're not just a brand making great quality divers, right, or great quality fields. We're a brand that can also strive forward and make incredible feats of engineering at an insane price. And that's what makes them, in my opinion, technical blended with lifestyle. And every single brand can be put into a quadrant or two quadrants, okay? And we'll talk more about this. If you look through as many microbrands as you know, what you'll start to find is that more and more microbrands are in more than one or two quadrants. There's many microbrands that occupy all four. And that's totally fine, but it does not allow them to scale easily. And I know because we've worked with brands like this and trying to run advertising and email marketing for brands that bring out watches of every type, like ever. It is so hard to build an audience with a following when you're releasing and changing something all the time. It's like, I'm trying to think of an example. Imagine if you had a partner, okay, and he or she every single day had an entirely different haircut. I don't know how. Let's say they have a superpower that you don't know about. Okay, they can grow back hair. One day your partner's a mohawk. One day they have dreadlocks. One day they have a buzz cut. One day they're bald. It would be very hard at the start of the relationship, to be honest, to maintain a sort of equilibrium of attraction with that partner, if that makes sense. Okay. If you take that very bizarre analogy that just came out of my mental head, okay, and you implement that into a watch brand, and imagine a watch brand bringing out a utility watch and saying it's amazing for hiking and extreme sports, and then a month later they bring out a dress watch and say it's for refined people with refined palates. I'm already confused even explaining that, you know? So you need to fit within the quadrant, and too many brands just don't do it. Their positioning's completely wild, it's inconsistent, it's all over the place. And because of that, it means that they're not able to scale. And I know this is fact, as absolute fact. So your sector, whichever you're in, your primary sector should be your North Star for all of your marketing, for your advertising creative, your Instagram social creative, your Facebook social creative, your marketing, your email marketing, your product decisions, your development decisions, and so on. Okay. Now, another example, in fact, let's get into the next slide and we can talk about this example I've just come up with. So, quadrant crossbreeding. Whilst a brand's foundation should be concentrated, its communication can still reach all four sectors. And the quadrant was designed for this. In fact, let's imagine the quadrant, okay, as a double layered sapphire dial, okay, with the same print on each. The top layer only has one quadrant selection, maybe two, as we've said. The bottom layer, you can go through all four. And I'll explain what we mean going into this very, very shortly. So, whilst your section of the quadrant, let's say movement watches, for example, is lifestyle, you can market utility, you can market technical, and you can also market prestige. Now, whilst a brand like Movement may not be able to be prestige, because in my opinion, they're budget kind of crappy watches, right? You can chop and change your marketing within the quadrant. So, a utility brand can market lifestyle through storytelling. So, let's say, for example, you make field watches. And that's what you do. You make rugged, solid field watches. And you market rugged, solid field watches. Okay? You market them out to everyone. Every watch enthusiast, everyone in the world loves your rugged field watches. And your marketing says, this will survive a nuclear bomb. Okay? You can crawl through the trenches. You can swing from the highest trees. You can swim in the deepest oceans. And this watch will be by your side and you'll be able to tell the time clearly. It has 3 million layers of BGW9 superluminova. It has a triple domed sapphire crystal. It is incredible. It's forged with iron from Valhalla. Okay, this is an incredible watch. And all your marketing is driven towards that. Okay. However, let's say you do that and everyone buys your watches. Let's say you make 50 million in sales. Okay, maybe even 1 million. It depends how many people are interested in what you've created. Let's say it's 1 million. You sell 1 million watches. Congratulations, by the way, you've just made a lot of money and you're very happy. However, audience saturation always hits a point. You always run out of people to market to. Okay, so how can we change that? How can we change that without bringing out a new watch? How can we broaden the amount of people interested in this rugged field watch? It's really simple. We change the quadrant positioning of the marketing. So, We keep running our ads for the utility watch. However, we change all of the other advertising. We create a whole new set of ads, whole new set of emails, whole new set of copywriting and imagery to make this a lifestyle watch. So, no longer, or well, we are, but to the audience that we've already saturated, showing ads of, let's say, a guy who looks like he might be military or sort of ex-Air Force or something like that, crawling through mud with your watch on. The watch is a bit muddied, but it's glistening. It looks great. Okay. We've got those ads running. Now we're going to run another segment of ads targeting the lifestyle quadrant. So we could, for example, get an image of the watch at a desk on someone's wrist. You can see the cuff of their shirt that they're wearing and they're typing away. Okay. You can then make the ad say something like, built for everyday challenges and extreme adventures, or something like that. Okay. You could then have another ad from the founder, a talking head advertisement from the founder saying and explaining the design process of the watch, or telling you about their family, for example, and why their family support the brand. They're a small outfit, his kids help pack up the watches, and so on. Okay. You could have another image showing the watch on someone's dresser table. Okay. When they click on the link to the website, they're obviously hit with all this utility impressive messaging. However, the thing that got them there, the thing that drew them into the brand, was lifestyle focused messaging. It wasn't someone at war wearing your watch. It was somebody at a desk, somebody who is working 9 to 5 every day, just like them. That is a lifestyle quadrant, a lifestyle type of advertising for a utility brand. Okay? Now, let's talk about prestige. We spoke about this. I tried to speak about this with, for example, Christopher Ward, which obviously was different segments, but let's say, hypothetically, we find out that Rolex next year, at Watches and Wonders or something like that, Rolex release a watch that is just like, it's technical innovation that we didn't know existed right now. Okay. What that means is, because they've changed quadrants, they've moved into technical, they've innovated, and they've demonstrated that they can do something that nobody else can or nobody else was able to do. They've demonstrated that they are one of one. So instead of being the Rolex that everyone has to wait to get, the Rolex that gets gate kept in boutiques and so on, all of this press they get, it's now, yes, we are that Rolex, but look at what we can make. And nobody else has created this or invented this or innovated this. And nobody else has watchmakers skilled enough to create this watch. Does that make sense? So you can chop and change your quadrants, okay? So if we think about it again, your first quadrant positioning, let's say you're a lifestyle brand, is your customer facing brand. So that is your branding, your brand kit, and so on, okay? That should not appeal to every quadrant, but you should be able to market to each. Because the minute you do that, and we will go into this in later modules when we help you set up advertising, we help you with email marketing, when you're able to market to each quadrant instead of just the one in which you reside primarily, you are able immediately to create 4 ads instead of 1, okay? You are able to create 4 emails instead of 1. You're able to shoot 4 videos instead of 1. Because now I've just given you 4 different angles to tackle. Okay. Now, I also want to go into the consumer psychology behind this, which is another thing about the quadrant that I think is really, really important and valuable for you guys. And by the way, I hope you're enjoying this so far. This is something that I've worked on for a while, the quadrant. And whilst I'm like used to using it day in and day out, and so are my team, I do find it super hard to explain, right? But I hope I'm trying to make it clear with practical examples for you right now. That's what I'm trying to do. So I hope you can appreciate that and really get some immense value from this. And of course, if you are confused, you're obviously welcome to join in any of the group calls or your next one-to-one call with me, or drop a message in our private chat if you're obviously in that program. If you're here just for the program, then you can obviously upgrade if you would like to. So, just as every brand finds its place within the Dial Quadrant, so does every buyer. Now, if I put this in a group like the League of Microbrands, for example, and I put a photo of the Dial Quadrant and I said, every single buyer fits into one of these quadrants, I 100% would get absolutely dogged on by every watch enthusiast in the world. And the reason behind that, and we've seen this across millions of data points for watch brands, they hate to feel like they've been sorted into a group or you are deciding for them what they're going to like. Watch enthusiasts hate that so much. They hate being told they should buy this. They hate being told that this is what they would like. So it's just worth keeping that little tidbit in mind because it's 100% true. Okay. However, we've found this with all of our marketing. They are so predictable every single time. Okay. Their taste it's always for marketing. It's always anchored in one dominant quadrant. Every single watch buyer, watch enthusiast specifically, is either utility, technical, prestige, or lifestyle. They are always attracted to one of these first before the other three. Does that make sense? So, utility buyers might value function and endurance, so specifications, reliability, purpose. I honestly think that most or pretty much all of hardcore watch enthusiasts or collectors, specifically in the microbrand space, are utility and technical. That's honestly how I feel based on everything we've seen, all the marketing we've done for watch brands. They're all utility or technical. They are looking for a good movement at a good price, which can be very hard for margins, and it's very hard for microbrands to scale past that. But we will help you do that in this program. Technical buyers, innovation, measurable precision. They're drawn to engineering mastery. Okay. Prestige buyers, refinement, heritage, symbolism. They want people to be seen. They want people to see them wearing the watch, They want to feel seen by people. They collect status and storytelling as well. Okay. Lifestyle, they're all about design, creativity. They buy with emotion. They buy with, oh, I like that, before anything else. Okay. They like the idea of community. They like feeling part of a movement. All right. Most collectors, honestly, so many, like I would say over 90%, are in. Apologies, God, I yawned there. Most collectors are within one or two of these sectors, okay? But their curiosity, their culture, and their emotion allow them to move between sections or sectors of the Dial Quadrant, okay? And this is where marketing to everything in the Dial Quadrant suddenly means you can get 5 sales or 4 sales when you could have got 1, okay? And I'm going to explain how that works as well. So, cross-quadrant movement. Collectors, watch enthusiasts, even customers do not stay fixed, okay? Let's say, I'll give you an example of this that isn't even watch-based, okay? I saw a coffee machine. I wanted a good coffee machine. I've also just realised I mentioned my coffee machine in the past lesson as well. I have to apologise for that. I'm a big fan of good coffee. That's why. My coffee machine's not new. It's like 2 years old now, so I have no reason to talk about it. But I like coffee, so this is a good example because it's one that I can think of. I wanted a good coffee machine, okay? I saw an advert for a Sage coffee machine. I think Sage in the US are called Breville still. I may be wrong, but they're called Sage here in the UK, at least. I'm not sure why. I think there's a legal reason, but it's a Sage coffee machine. And it's one of the ones where you put in whole beans, you can set your grind time and, all that stuff. It's an espresso machine. Now, when I saw that, I saw people using it. I had a few friends who had machines like that, and they were living this pretty cool life, and they had cool coffee, great coffee, and I wanted one. I decided, oh, that's the machine I want, okay? Now, I would argue that is a lifestyle-orientated decision. I am a lifestyle buyer. I fancy the lifestyle of someone with good coffee. I'm not technical, Because if I was technical, I would have a dedicated grinder, I would have scales, I would spray my beans, I would have a dosing, like everything would be perfect. I would hand pump the coffee with a bar count to make sure I got the correct bars of pressure, right? That's technical, okay? And I'm not utility, because utility is probably on the go, make a coffee with this machine. It's a camping stove that heats itself up. So you can make coffee if you're in the car, you can make coffee if you're on a treadmill, you can make coffee if you're sitting at a desk. No matter what, you can do it with this, right? And it's not prestige either, because it isn't. It was a expensive machine, at least for my budget. I think it was about £1,000. But in terms of coffee machines, it's nothing. It's consumer grade, okay, like entirely. So it was a lifestyle decision. However, when I wanted that machine, after I decided this was the one, I became a utility/technical buyer. For that machine though. I started, and you might have done this before with other purchases if you think about it. I started watching YouTube reviews. I learned about how accurate the grinder was. I learned about the pros and cons of having an integrated grinder in a coffee machine or getting a cheaper espresso machine and an external, better grinder, right? I learned about why a burr grinder is great and why you don't want a blade grinder. I learned all these strange things about coffee machines that I've never needed since, okay? I learned all the technical reasons that I should have that one coffee machine. I watched reviews, I read articles, I read customer reviews online, okay? And I purchased it. So I went from lifestyle to technical, okay? Now, the reason I did that is to convince myself to buy. Do you understand that? Because this is genuinely like the revelation of the Dial Quadrant. Customers, if they like the watch when they see it, if they like the watch that you have produced, designed, they will eventually talk themselves into buying it, but not if they do it themselves. You need to take them on that journey. You need to tell them why it's so great technically. You need to give them all 4 quadrants because they will find a reason to buy, okay? If they don't buy after they've been marketed to all those 4 quadrants, then they're probably not going to buy unless you do a sale, which you might do once a year on Black Friday, something like that. But that is how you can basically convert any customer with the Dial Quadrant, okay? You just need to find what they're most interested in, all right? So a buyer might be in utility, but they're drawn to toughness, authenticity, and then they drift towards technical because they're fascinated by the precision and the innovation of the watch, right? They're trying to educate themselves on the piece that has piqued their curiosity. They're trying to convince themselves to buy. Another might be prestige, but then they explore lifestyle through collaborations or unique colors or cultural relevance, right? So we can think, for example, Rolex's super crazy colorful dials that they've started bringing out. That's prestige, and it's now lifestyle because super rich guys are wearing it, and they're like, I just thought it was fun and cool and goofy, right? That is prestige becoming lifestyle. This sort of cross-pollination, in my opinion, is what keeps horology fascinating, right? It's no longer, I only want a watch that does this. I only want a watch that does this. Everyone is willing to explore new things and be educated on new things as well. And as long as you can satisfy their palate for their primary quadrant interest, then you'll have no issue getting more watch sales, okay? So here's an example of brands influencing buyers. Now, this is a big example that always springs to the top of my head, okay, or top of my mind even. So, as I've said before, you with your marketing can pull collectors, watch enthusiasts, or potential customers out of their home quadrant. And when you do that, when you pull them out, you can introduce them into any new quadrant you'd like. Imagine it as a game board, okay? And therefore, you can open their eyes to a whole other world of horology, right? The Moser and Studio Underdog collaboration, I believe it was called Project Passion, the Passion Fruit watch. Here's the Underdog, and here's the Moser, okay? I believe that this is like the most amazing example of a prestige brand leaning into lifestyle, and vice versa, a lifestyle leaning into prestige, okay? Moser's reputation for kind of prestige, well-made watches and very restrained designs, like very restrained, collaborated with Underdog to bring out the most, like, in my opinion, polarizing, insane, crazy, creative collaboration. Like, you wouldn't expect this. If you said, who is Studio Underdog going to collaborate with, you probably wouldn't have guessed a brand like Moser, right? Not because they're below Moser in any way, just because you think in quadrants, right? You don't think it's going to be a prestige brand, but it was. And what happened as a result of that? Moser buyers suddenly, even though they may in the past have not been interested in Underdog at that price point, suddenly were ravenous for it, okay? And lifestyle buyers now know about Moser. And maybe they now want a Moser if they can afford it, when they can afford it. Do you understand? You're able to draw people out of quadrants and open up a whole new market for yourself and for your watch brand. And that is how quadrant crossbreeding essentially works. Here's another example, in my opinion. Second. I am a huge fan of him. I'm a fan of his collaborations. I did own a desk diver, actually. I got one of these on launch. I got one of these on launch, the Christopher Ward. I think these are interesting. This is interesting collaborations. In my opinion, the best way to describe what Second does is he kind of puts a middle finger up at horology, right? He kind of says, I don't have time for this, up yours. This is cool, look at this, I had a funny idea, or I spilt my coffee this morning and this is what the watch looks like, right? That is the way that he attacks it. Now, by the way, that doesn't mean he's not skilled. I absolutely love his designs. He is a genuine dial artist, and every collaboration he does sells out. It is insane. Everyone wants to work with him, okay? Now, when he did this desk diver collaboration with Christopher Ward, it's interesting because I see Christopher Ward as a bit of a legacy microbrand. Collectors like them, serious technical and utility buyers like them, en masse, in my opinion, the majority. And I think that they see them as Christopher Ward are now positioned as quite a serious brand. They're scaling. They might be lifestyle, but they do make serious watches. And we've seen that with the Bel Canto and so on. So when they did this, it showed, hey guys, we're fun, we're playful, we can do that. And they collaborated with Second. Now, not only did that obviously expose Christopher Ward's audience to Second, which I think there's, apart from financials, there is more benefit in Christopher Ward for this than there is for Second. Obviously, apart from money. However, it shows that Christopher Ward is willing to have a laugh, right? Even the collaboration, which was a collaboration between both brands, the desk diver. Obviously, as you know, maybe you don't, in the watch world, a desk diver, it's a sort of inside joke or joke about loads of people buy great dive watches. They buy a really nice dive watch and it's designed to do well at the bottom of the ocean and they wear it to their office job every day, right? That person is called a desk diver. So this watch was a collaboration between that. And you can see the bezel, the timings on it are brilliant. It's got a coffee, it's got the power nap and so on. And I remember the case back has got like the desk diver motif. It's just fantastic. It's a fantastic collaboration. But again, it shows, I hope it shows another good example of cross-quadrant movement for watch buyers, okay? Now, these examples demonstrate quadrant movement doesn't have to be diluted, right? It can be evolved. It can be evolution. When it's done intentionally and you execute it well, collaboration between quadrants becomes a tool for relevance. You can stay relevant, you can leverage marketing, a bit like these guys did with Second, okay? They really created a buzz around this watch. Now, this will expand your reach, it will capture new customers and a buyer's emotional palette, okay? It doesn't mean that every watch you do should attack a different quadrant. Please do not do that. It's a really, in my opinion, bad idea, okay? A lifestyle enthusiast may eventually seek mechanical credibility of the technical quadrant, right? A technically minded buyer may admire the heritage of a prestige maison, okay? So Rolex, for example. Someone technically minded also loves Rolex, okay? Any watch brand that can understand everything I've just tried to go through with the Dial Quadrant, okay, and understand the fluidity, communication, and so on, will allow you to scale. It will allow you to align your marketing effectively. All right. So let's summarize this lesson because my throat is very sore. You can probably hear throughout this lesson I've got croakier and croakier. I've not been well recently, but hopefully you've been able to hear me clearly. My microphone is decent enough. So every watch brand sits somewhere within the Dial Quadrant, okay? So utility, technical, prestige, lifestyle. Again, utility, technical, prestige, lifestyle. However, the quadrants are not rigid. They're coordinates on a map, so they just simply define and show you the direction for your paid advertising, email marketing, PR, okay, and so on. Now, the strongest brands focus on one or two sectors for their overall brand identity. They're top of funnel, they're overarching, this is us, the website design, the Instagram feed, the aesthetics, okay? This is us. You're quick, okay, these guys are technical. Okay, these guys are heritage. They've been around for 100 years, right? That is your overarching quadrant. You also want to understand, as we've covered, how your audience moves between quadrants. And it's really worth figuring out, you know, are my audience lifestyle, like what's going to pull them to buy, right? What is going to allow them to purchase my watch without feeling the sort of guilt of spending money, right? Without too much convincing. How can I just directly shoot for them instead of telling them about something they're not interested in, okay? And you need to be willing and ready to cross sectors with some of your releases to demonstrate your capability. For example, technical. Or for example, and I say this to so many brands that we work with, if you have a top-selling watch or a top-selling diver, field watch, and everyone loves it, make a colourful dial. Make a fun summer dial. Make a fun Halloween version. Do something interesting. Give everyone who loves one and wears one every day a reason to buy another, right? It's an easy way to make more revenue as long as you market it effectively. Not only that, but you can run ads to a broader audience because it's lifestyle. It's not just watch buyer. It's not just watch enthusiast, okay? And I don't want you to think, after everything we've gone through today, that anything about the quadrant is to limit you or your creativity. It is not. It is a guiding compass. It's a map, all right? It keeps you creative. It keeps, your strategies and your commercial direction as an actual business aligned. That's the point. It's to look at yourself in the mirror and go, I need to stop knee-jerking around everything. I need to stop jumping from technical to utility to lifestyle to prestige, right? I need to stop doing that, and I need to double down on what people are interested in, what our customers love.